Her iPhone shattered against the tile floor. Sophia Morgan, CEO of a $50 million medical empire, stood frozen in the cheese aisle of Whole Foods, her mouth hanging open like she'd been slapped. The black man in paint-stained jeans, the one she'd just insulted in German, calling him poor, uneducated, unfit to raise his own daughter, had answered her. In flawless German. Every word perfect. "I understand everything you're saying, madam." What happened next would destroy her assumptions, cost a powerful man his career, and spark a custody battle that threatened to tear a little girl from the only parent she had left. Comment your city below. Let me know how far this story travels. The call had gone to hell in exactly 14 minutes. Sophia Morgan pressed her phone against her ear, pacing through Whole Foods like a caged animal, while her Frankfurt partners delivered news that made her stomach drop. $50 million. Gone. Because someone on her translation team had confused liability limitations with liability exemptions in a German medical contract. "This is unacceptable," she hissed into the phone, her voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "I promised my father before he died that I would double our European presence. Do you understand what this means?" The voice on the other end stammered excuses. Sophia wasn't listening anymore. She ended the call and stood in the middle of the store, her designer heels planted on the polished floor, her Hermes bag clutched against her side like a shield. Her brother James would hear about this within the hour. The disappointment in his eyes would be worse than any financial loss. Her father had built Morgan Medical Technologies from nothing. She had spent 15 years proving she deserved to lead it. And now, because of one incompetent translator, she was watching a cornerstone deal crumble. Sophia needed to breathe. She needed to think. She needed to be anywhere but in a boardroom where people would see her composure crack. So here she was, in a grocery store, hiding among organic cheeses and artisanal crackers like a coward. Her phone rang again. Another Frankfurt number. She answered in German this time, the language she'd learned at her Swiss boarding school, the language she used when she wanted privacy in public, when she needed to vent without witnesses understanding. "Tell Schneider I'll call him personally." She said the German words flowing with practiced precision. "This isn't over. We'll fix this." As she spoke, her eyes drifted across the store. And that's when she saw him. A black man stood near the dairy section. Late 30s, maybe 40. He wore paint-stained jeans and a work shirt that had seen better days. His hands, calloused rough, clearly accustomed to manual labor, gripped a shopping cart. And in that cart sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8. Strawberry blonde hair pulled into a simple ponytail. Blue eyes too big for her face, curious and bright beneath bangs that needed trimming. Her clothes were clean, but worn the kind of outfits that came from clearance racks and thrift stores. Something ugly rose in Sophia's chest. Not compassion, not empathy. Something darker. She was angry. She was frustrated. She was watching $50 million evaporate because of other people's incompetence. And here was this man, this stranger, who probably couldn't even afford the organic milk he was pretending to consider standing in her path while her world fell apart. The words came out before she could stop them. "Look at that man," she muttered in German, her voice low but clear. Shabby clothes. Child dressed so poorly. He probably cannot even afford proper education for his daughter. Feeding her cheap processed food instead of organic. She kept talking, the venom spilling out like poison from a wound she hadn't known was festering. These people have children they cannot provide for. No ambition, no drive. Just existing, taking up space, contributing nothing. The release felt good. Petty, yes. Beneath her, absolutely. But in that moment, with her professional life imploding, Sophia Morgan needed someone to look down on. Someone who reminded her that at least she wasn't struggling. At least she wasn't poor. At least she wasn't him. No one in this American supermarket would understand German anyway. The anonymity of a foreign language was her sanctuary. Then the man turned. Slowly, deliberately. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. but his eyes, dark and intelligent, fixed directly on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. When he spoke, his German was flawless. Perfect grammar, perfect accent, perfect pronunciation that would have impressed her Heidelberg professors. "I understand every word you're saying, madam." Sophia's phone slipped from her fingers. It hit the tile floor with a crack, the screen spiderwebbing on impact. She didn't move to pick it up. She couldn't move at all. "And while my daughter may not wear expensive clothes," the man continued, his voice steady and measured, "she is taught to respect others regardless of their appearance. Perhaps that is a lesson some adults still need to learn." The store had gone silent. A checkout clerk paused mid-scan. An elderly woman with a cart full of groceries suddenly became very interested in the nutritional content of mascarpone. A young mother pulled her children closer, sensing the tension crackling through the air like static before a storm. Sophia's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time in her adult life, she had absolutely nothing to say. The little girl tugged on her father's sleeve, confusion written across her small face. "Daddy! What's wrong? What did that lady say?" The man knelt down to his daughter's level. His voice softened completely. All the steel gone, replaced by pure gentleness. "Sometimes people make incorrect assumptions about others, sweetheart. This lady was speaking in German, and she didn't realize I could understand her." The girl's face scrunched in thought. "Like the kids at school, the ones who laugh because I don't have new shoes." Her voice dropped lower, almost to a whisper. "Or because I don't have a mom like everyone else." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She watched the man's expression shift, a flash of grief so raw and deep that it took her breath away quickly, masked by a protective smile meant to shield his child from pain she was too young to fully understand. "Something like that, baby girl," he said quietly. "But remember what we always say about assumptions." The child nodded, her solemnity giving way to a small giggle. "They make a donkey out of you and me." The man smiled at their familiar joke, and Sophia saw something in that smile that shattered every assumption she'd made in the last 60 seconds. This wasn't a man defeated by circumstances. This was a man who had faced something terrible and come out the other side with his dignity intact. Sophia bent down to retrieve her phone, her cheeks burning with shame so intense she could feel the heat radiating from her skin. The cracked screen reflected her own face, back at her fractured, distorted, unrecognizable. "I apologize." She managed, her voice stiff and formal. "My call was stressful and I spoke thoughtlessly." The man nodded once. Just once. A simple acknowledgement that somehow made everything worse. No anger, no matching cruelty, no demand for a more extensive apology. Just quiet dignity in the face of her pettiness. He turned back to the dairy case and selected a small block of Swiss cheese, a loaf of whole wheat bread, a gallon of milk, simple groceries, honest groceries, the kind that stretched a budget but fed a family with love. The little girl was still watching Sophia. Those blue eyes were unnervingly perceptive for someone so young. "I truly am sorry," Sophia said again, directing her words to the child this time. "Sometimes grown-ups forget their manners." The girl's face softened slightly. "That's okay. Daddy says everyone has bad days sometimes." Then the child's gaze drifted to the bakery display, to a chocolate cake with swirled frosting and decorative flowers. Her eyes lingered there for just a moment, longing, wistful, before she quickly looked away. But Sophia had seen it. That brief flash of desire for something small and sweet that was probably outside the budget of a man buying store-brand cheese. "Please," Sophia heard herself say, the words tumbling out before she could think them through. "Let me buy the cake for you, as an apology." The man, the father, started to refuse. Sophia could see the internal struggle playing across his face. Pride wrestling with the desire to give his daughter something special. The weight of being a provider who couldn't always provide everything. "Maya," he said finally, his jaw tight. "What do you say?" The little girl's eyes had already lit up like Christmas morning. Thank you, ma'am. The cake looks really good. It's Miss Morgan, Sophia said, extending her hand in a gesture that felt absurdly formal given what had just happened. Sophia Morgan. The man hesitated, then took her hand. His grip was firm, his palm rough with calluses. Marcus Thompson. They walked toward the checkout together, an unlikely trio bound by the aftermath of cruelty and grace. Sophia found herself studying Marcus from the corner of her eye, trying to reconcile what she'd witnessed with the assumptions she'd made. His clothes were worn but clean. His posture was straight despite whatever burdens he carried. There was something about him that nagged at her, something familiar she couldn't quite place. The way he moved, the cadence of his speech, the quiet confidence that seemed completely at odds with his circumstances. "Where did you learn German?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Heidelberg University," Marcus replied simply. 2 years of postdoctoral research in comparative linguistics. Sophia nearly tripped over her own feet. Postdoctoral research. The man in paint-stained jeans buying budget groceries had a PhD. And before that, she couldn't help herself now. The pieces weren't fitting together, and her analytical mind demanded answers. Marcus was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing how much of his story to share with a stranger who had just insulted him in front of his daughter. "I was a professor," he said finally. "Department of Comparative Linguistics at UMass Amherst, tenure track, published in journals most people have never heard of. Languages were my life." The checkout line moved forward. The teenage cashier watched their interaction with undisguised fascination. "I don't understand," Sophia said, hating how lost she sounded. "What happened?" Marcus glanced down at Maya, who was carefully examining her cake through the clear plastic container. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old grief. "My wife Keisha. She was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. Brilliant woman microbiologist, worked on antibiotic resistance research." He paused, his Adam's apple moving as he swallowed. "I left academia to care for her. After she passed, there were medical bills. Maya needed stability more than I needed a title." The words hung in the air between them. "Academic positions don't wait around." Marcus continued, something approaching dark humor in his tone. "Turns out universities aren't big on professors who disappear for 2 years to watch their wives die." "I'm so sorry," Sophia said, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she meant it completely. "We're doing fine." Marcus lifted Maya's cake onto the conveyor belt. "Her school is good. We have a roof over our heads. I do handyman work fixing things, basic repairs. It's honest work." He met Sophia's eyes directly. "Some things are worth more than professional prestige." The cashier scanned their items. Sophia handed over her Black American Express card, without thinking, the same card she used for business dinners that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. She saw Marcus notice the centurion symbol. His expression remained unreadable. Outside, the contrast was almost comical. Her midnight blue Bentley sat gleaming in the afternoon sun. His pickup truck, rusted around the edges, at least 15 years old, occupied the space beside it. 2 different worlds that had somehow collided in the cheese aisle. "What do you do now?" Sophia asked. "For work, I mean. Day to day." Marcus shifted Maya's hand in his, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "Repairs, handyman stuff, some part-time maintenance at Maya's elementary school." He shrugged. "I'm good with my hands. People need things fixed." But Sophia's mind was racing now, calculating possibilities she hadn't considered 30 minutes ago. "Mr. Thompson." "Marcus?" "Marcus." She took a breath. "My company needs someone with your language skills, German specifically. We're negotiating a major merger with a Frankfurt-based medical technology firm, and our translation team just cost us a $50 million contract because they don't understand cultural context." Marcus stared at her. "You're offering me a job, right now, in a parking lot." I'm offering you an opportunity. You don't know anything about my qualifications, my work history, whether I'm reliable or competent. I know you're fluent in German, Sophia said, warming to her argument. I know you have a doctorate in linguistics from one of Europe's most prestigious universities. I know you handled my rudeness with more grace than I deserved. She glanced at Maya, who was listening with the intense focus children bring to adult conversations. And I know you're raising a polite, thoughtful daughter on your own after losing your wife. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. The silence stretched between them. Maya tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy is the nice lady offering you a real job. The question cut straight to the heart of everything. A real job, not pity, not charity, not a wealthy woman's attempt to buy her way out of guilt. Marcus looked down at his daughter, then back at Sophia. When he spoke, his voice was steady but cautious. I'd need to know more. Responsibilities, schedule, flexibility. His hand tightened around Maya's. I have commitments that aren't negotiable. Sophia nodded, understanding flooding through her. She reached into her purse and withdrew a business card. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Something tangible in a digital world. My direct line. Think about it this weekend. If you're interested, call me Monday. Marcus took the card, his rough fingers brushing hers for just a moment. Why? The question contained multitudes. Why offer a job to a stranger? Why trust someone based on a grocery store encounter? Why reach across the vast chasm between their circumstances? Because, Sophia said, surprising herself with the honesty of her answer. I think we both need this chance to be better than we were an hour ago. It wasn't a business answer. It wasn't strategic or calculated. It was simply true. Marcus tucked the card into his shirt pocket. I'll think about it. He lifted Maya into the truck, securing her seatbelt with practiced hands. The little girl waved at Sophia through the window, her smile bright despite the chaos of the last hour. Thank you for the cake, Miss Morgan. You're welcome, sweetheart. The truck pulled out of the parking lot, rattling slightly as it turned onto the main road. Sophia stood beside her Bentley and watched until it disappeared from view. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Conference call with Frankfurt team in 30 minutes. Are you still at the grocery store? Sophia stared at the message, trying to reconcile the world of international business deals with the conversation she'd just had. Marcus Thompson, PhD from Heidelberg. Former professor. Widower. Single father. Handyman. A man who spoke flawless German and had met her cruelty with dignity. She got into her car and pulled out of the parking lot, but her mind was still in that store. Still hearing Maya's small voice. Because I don't have a mom like everyone else. Still seeing the grief that flashed across Marcus's face before he masked it with a father's protective smile. The drive back to her office took 40 minutes. Sophia barely noticed the traffic. She thought about Marcus's hands, strong and capable, despite the calluses. She thought about Maya's polite, thank you, and the way she'd looked at that chocolate cake like it was treasure. She thought about professors who became handymen and the kinds of losses that could reshape a life so completely. Her assistant Margaret was waiting in the lobby with a stack of papers and a concerned expression. The Frankfurt call is in 5 minutes. Should I reschedule? It was a reasonable question. Sophia Morgan was never late, never unprepared. Never anything less than perfectly composed. No, Sophia said, straightening her jacket. Let's get this done. But as she walked toward the elevator, her fingers found the cracked screen of her phone. The physical reminder of her encounter with Marcus and Maya. Of words spoken in anger and met with quiet dignity. Of assumptions shattered and possibilities suddenly revealed. The conference call went smoothly enough. Sophia asked the right questions, made the appropriate decisions, guided the conversation toward salvaging what could be salvaged from the Frankfurt debacle. But part of her mind remained fixed elsewhere. After the call ended, she sat alone in her office as evening shadows lengthened across the city. Her company employed hundreds of people. generated millions in revenue, held patents that advanced medical technology around the world. Yet somehow, none of that felt as significant as a conversation she'd had with a single father in a grocery store parking lot. She picked up her phone and scrolled to her head of human resources. "Jennifer, it's Sophia. I may have a candidate for that translation position we discussed. Someone with exceptional qualifications." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's currently between professional positions, but his background is exactly what we need for the Schneider negotiations." It wasn't charity, she told herself after hanging up. It was good business. A man with Marcus's education and language skills was precisely what Morgan Medical Technologies required for their European expansion. The fact that he was struggling financially, that he had a daughter to support, that he'd handled her insults with grace, those were just coincidences. Background information, irrelevant to the business decision. But even as she constructed these rationalizations, Sophia knew she was lying to herself. This wasn't about German translation services. This was about second chances, about the possibility that people could be better than their worst moments. Her phone rang. James, her brother. "I just got off a follow-up call with the Schneider people," he said without preamble. "They're still interested, but they want someone who understands the cultural nuances. The language barriers are killing us." Something clicked in Sophia's mind. Pieces falling into place. What if I told you I might have found exactly the right person? You have my attention. Doctorate in comparative linguistics from Heidelberg. Fluent in German. Academic experience. She was describing Marcus like a resume, now reducing their encounter to bullet points. Currently available for project work. James was quiet for a moment. "Sounds too good to be true. What's the catch?" What was the catch that she'd met this potential translator by insulting him in a grocery store? That she had no idea if he'd even return her call? "No catch," she said. "I'll know more Monday." The weekend passed with excruciating slowness. Sophia found herself checking her phone more frequently than usual, wondering if Marcus might call before Monday. She attended her usual charity gala on Saturday night, made the expected donations, chatted with the right people, but her mind kept drifting. To paint-stained jeans and careful grocery budgets, to a little girl sharing chocolate cake with her father, to the quiet dignity of a man who had lost everything and somehow kept going. Sunday morning she canceled her brunch reservation and drove to a small diner in a neighborhood she rarely visited. The kind of place where families gathered after church, where coffee came in thick ceramic mugs and pancakes were stacked high. She sat alone in a booth watching parents with children. The easy laughter, the casual touches, the ordinary magic of family life that had somehow passed her by. By Monday morning, Sophia had convinced herself that Marcus wouldn't call. She threw herself into work with unusual intensity. 3 back-to-back meetings, a presentation to the board, a conference call with regulatory officials. Then, at 2:17 p.m., her direct line rang. "Miss Morgan." The voice was careful, uncertain. "This is Marcus Thompson. We met on Friday, at Whole Foods." Sophia felt her heart rate accelerate. "Marcus," she said, forcing her voice to remain professionally neutral. "I'm glad you called." The understatement of the century. "I'd like to hear more details," he said. "About the position, the responsibilities, the schedule." Sophia smiled, feeling something like joy bubble up in her chest for the first time in longer than she could remember. "When would be convenient for you to come in for an interview?" "I can do tomorrow afternoon, after I drop Maya at school." Always the father first. Always thinking about his daughter before himself. "Perfect. 2:00. She paused, then added, "Marcus, thank you for calling. I know this isn't exactly conventional." "Thank you for offering the chance," he replied quietly. Maya hasn't stopped talking about the cake, or the nice lady who bought it for her. After they hung up, Sophia sat in her chair and realized she was smiling. Really smiling. Not the professional expression she wore for business meetings. Something genuine. Something she hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow would bring answers to questions she hadn't known she was asking. Tomorrow would determine whether a moment of ugliness could transform into something meaningful. Tomorrow would show whether Sophia Morgan, CEO and self-made millionaire, could become someone worthy of Marcus Thompson's trust. But today, for the first time in years, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Marcus stood in the lobby of Morgan Medical Technologies and wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. The building rose 40 stories into the sky, all glass and steel and polished surfaces that reflected wealth he couldn't begin to comprehend. The receptionist had greeted him with professional courtesy, offered him water in an actual glass, not a paper cup, and directed him to wait in chairs that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He'd worn his only suit. Navy blue, slightly loose now after years of grief and manual labor, had whittled away his frame. The tie had been Sarah's last anniversary gift. She'd picked it out because it matched his eyes, she said. He'd had the suit cleaned, pressed, made as presentable as possible. But sitting here, surrounded by executives in custom tailoring and assistants carrying tablets that cost more than his truck, Marcus felt the weight of every callus on his hands, every paint stain he'd tried to scrub away, every reminder that he didn't belong in this world. Mr. Thompson. He looked up. A young woman with an earpiece and a tablet stood before him. Dr. Thompson, he corrected gently, surprising himself. He rarely used the title anymore. It felt like it belonged to someone else, the man he'd been before Sarah got sick. The woman blinked. Of course, Dr. Thompson. Ms. Morgan is ready for you. Please follow me. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent. Marcus used the time to center himself, to remember that whatever happened today, he and Maya would be fine. They'd survived worse. They'd survived Sarah's diagnosis, her treatment, her death. They'd survived moving twice, downsizing their lives, learning to live on less than half of what they'd once earned. They would survive this too, whether it led somewhere or not. The doors opened to reveal another reception area, more intimate, but no less impressive. Original artwork on the walls, fresh flowers on every surface, the subtle scent of money in the air. Sophia Morgan rose from behind a desk that could have paid his rent for 6 months. Marcus, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. She looked different today. Still polished, still powerful, but somehow less intimidating than she'd been in Whole Foods. Her charcoal gray suit was impeccable. Her blonde hair swept back in an elegant twist, professional and controlled. But there was something softer in her eyes now. Something almost like hope. Thank you for the opportunity, Marcus replied, acutely aware of the contrast between them. Her perfectly tailored suit versus his slightly worn one. Her manicured nails against his work-roughened hands. Sophia led him through a set of glass doors into a conference room where a man with familiar features waited. Same bone structure as Sophia, same intelligent eyes. Her brother Marcus realized. This is James Morgan, Sophia said. He oversees our international division and the Schneider merger specifically. James stood, offering a firm handshake. So you're the linguistics expert Sophia discovered in a grocery store. Discovered is a generous term, Marcus said with a small smile. More like insulted in German and surprised when I responded. James laughed, a genuine sound that immediately put Marcus more at ease. Sophia told me about your encounter. Quite unorthodox recruitment methods, but sometimes the best talent appears in unexpected places. They settled around the table. Marcus noticed a stack of papers before James, his curriculum vitae, he realized with surprise. They'd done their research. You've looked into my background, he observed. Of course, Sophia said. When you mentioned Heidelberg and UMass, it wasn't difficult to find your academic record. James tapped the papers. 6 languages fluently. Published in top linguistics journals. Postdoctoral research on Germanic language evolution and its impact on technical terminology. He looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes directly. What I don't understand is why someone with your credentials is working as a handyman. The question wasn't accusatory, just direct. Still, Marcus felt his spine stiffen. I believe Sophia mentioned my situation. She did, James acknowledged. But I'd like to hear it from you. Marcus took a measured breath. My wife was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. I took a leave of absence to care for her, which eventually became a resignation when her condition worsened. After she passed, I had significant medical debt and a traumatized 6-year-old daughter who had just lost her mother. He paused, letting the words settle. Returning to academia wasn't feasible. Academic positions don't wait around for grieving widowers. The room fell silent. Marcus didn't elaborate on the nights spent beside Sarah's hospital bed, grading papers while she slept. He didn't mention how he'd continued teaching remotely until his department head had gently suggested that perhaps his focus was compromised. He didn't describe the day he'd packed up his office colleagues, avoiding eye contact in the hallway, unsure how to interact with grief so raw and visible. I understand priorities, James said finally. Family comes first, but that doesn't explain why someone with your expertise couldn't find corporate work. Surely there were options between professor and handyman. Before Marcus could respond, the conference room door opened without warning. A man in an expensive suit entered, not bothering to knock. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare. Richard. Sophia's voice had gone noticeably cooler. I don't recall inviting you to this meeting. The man Richard smiled thinly. As CFO, I make it my business to be involved in all potential hiring decisions, especially for high-level positions. He turned to Marcus, extending a hand. Richard Peterson. And you are Marcus Thompson. The handshake was too firm, held too long. A power move as transparent as it was unnecessary. Marcus had dealt with academic politics for years. He recognized dominance games when he saw them. Mr. Thompson is interviewing for the translation and cultural consultation position for the Schneider merger. Sophia explained her tone, making it clear this wasn't up for debate. Richard took a seat uninvited and picked up Marcus's CV from the table. He skimmed the document with exaggerated skepticism. Impressive on paper. But there's quite a gap in your employment history, Mr. Thompson. Nearly 3 years. Care to explain? It's Dr. Thompson, James corrected mildly. And we've already discussed his circumstances. Richard leaned back, fingers steepled. With all due respect, this is highly irregular. We typically hire from established firms, not... He gestured vaguely at Marcus. Whatever this is. The dismissal was deliberate, calculated, designed to provoke. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. This wasn't the first time he'd faced condescension from men who mistook arrogance for authority. Would you like me to demonstrate my qualifications, Mr. Peterson? Richard raised an eyebrow. By all means. Marcus switched to perfect, unaccented German. His voice filled the conference room with the fluid precision of a native speaker. I understand your concern about my unusual background. 3 years ago, I was teaching advanced linguistic theory to doctoral candidates and publishing in peer-reviewed journals. Then my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and my priorities shifted completely. You see before you not a failure of career, but a deliberate choice made out of love and responsibility. He paused, noting Richard's surprise, then continued. If Morgan Medical Technologies is looking for someone who understands not just German vocabulary and grammar, but the cultural nuances and technical specificity required for medical contract negotiations, I believe my background makes me uniquely qualified. I've lived in Germany, taught there, published there. I understand how Germans think, not just how they speak. The room was silent when he finished. Richard's face had gone slightly pale. Well, James said finally, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I believe that answers the language proficiency question. Sophia looked quietly triumphant. Richard, would you like Dr. Thompson to continue in Mandarin, perhaps? Or shall we proceed with the actual interview? Richard stood abruptly. I have another meeting. We'll discuss this later, Sophia. He left without further comment, the door closing too firmly behind him. I apologize for that, Sophia said once he was gone. Richard believes his role as CFO extends to all aspects of company management. Office politics, Marcus observed. Some things are universal, whether in academia or corporate America. James laughed. Indeed. Now shall we discuss the actual position? The next hour passed in detailed conversation about the Schneider merger, a German medical equipment manufacturer with revolutionary cardiac monitoring technology that MMT wanted to acquire and distribute globally. The deal had stalled over contract terms, cultural misunderstandings, and technical specifications that kept getting lost in translation. Our last translator was technically proficient, but missed cultural context, James explained. The Germans felt we were being aggressive when we thought we were being direct. Meanwhile, we thought they were being evasive when they were just being thorough. Marcus nodded. Germans value precision and comprehensive analysis. Americans tend to favor efficiency and decisive action. Both approaches have merit, but without cultural understanding, they create friction. As they talked, Marcus found himself genuinely engaged for the first time in years. This wasn't just translation work. This was applied linguistics, cultural mediation, the practical application of theories he'd once taught. His mind, which had been occupied with fixing leaky pipes and patching drywall for so long, was suddenly alive with complexity and purpose. "We have a conference call with Schneider this afternoon," Sophia said. "Would you be willing to sit in, not to participate, just observe and give us your thoughts afterward?" Marcus checked his watch. "I would, but I need to pick up Maya from school at 3. "We could arrange for a car to take you," James offered. Marcus shook his head. "I appreciate that, but I always pick her up myself. It's important to her, to both of us." Instead of the impatience he expected, Marcus saw understanding in Sophia's eyes. "Of course," she said. Family commitments come first. We can record the call for you to review later." As the interview concluded, James excused himself for another meeting, leaving Marcus and Sophia alone. "Your brother seems supportive," Marcus observed. "James trusts my judgment, and he's desperate to save the Schneider deal." Sophia paused. "It was our father's vision before he passed away last year." "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Her expression softened slightly. "It's different, of course. He was elderly. It was expected. Not like losing a spouse in their 30s, Marcus finished. Different kinds of grief. A moment of understanding passed between them. The recognition of loss, even if the circumstances were vastly different. "I should go," Marcus said finally. "I have a few jobs to complete before school pickup." Sophia walked him to the elevator. "We'll be in touch soon." "But Marcus..." She hesitated. "Regardless of what happens with the position, thank you for coming today, for giving this a chance." As the elevator doors closed, Marcus leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The interview had awakened something in him. The scholar, the professor, the man who had existed before grief and necessity had reshaped his life. It was exhilarating and terrifying. By the time he picked up Maya from school, Marcus had completed 2 repair jobs and changed back into his work clothes. Maya bounded toward his truck, clutching a piece of artwork. "Daddy, look, I made this in art class." It was a drawing of 3 figures. A tall man with dark skin, a small girl with orange-yellow hair, and a woman with yellow hair. "Is that you and me?" Marcus asked carefully. Usually, the 3rd figure in Maya's drawings was Sarah, often with wings or stars around her. "That's you and me and Miss Morgan," Maya said matter-of-factly. "She bought us cake, remember? Miss Jennings said to draw someone who was kind to us." Marcus felt something complex stir in his chest, an emotion he couldn't immediately name. That's nice, sweetheart." "The interview went well today." Maya continued her perception, startling as always. "Didn't it?" "Maybe. We'll see." She nodded sagely. "I think you should take it. You look happier when you talk about it. Like how you used to look when you talked about teaching." From the mouths of babes. That evening after Maya was asleep, Marcus reviewed the recording of the Schneider call that Sophia had emailed him. Within minutes, he spotted the problem's technical terms being translated correctly in vocabulary, but completely wrong in context. Cultural disconnects where Germans were expressing cautious interest that the Americans interpreted as reluctance. He worked until midnight preparing detailed notes. This wasn't just about a job anymore. This was about proving to himself that part of his old life, the intellectual engagement, the expertise he'd spent years developing, could be reclaimed, that he could be both the father Maya needed and the scholar he'd once been. The next morning, his phone rang as he was dropping Maya at school. "Marcus, it's Sophia Morgan. I've reviewed your notes on the Schneider call." Her voice carried an urgency he hadn't heard before. "They're exceptional. You identified issues we've been struggling with for months." "I'm glad they were helpful." "More than helpful. James wants to offer you the position immediately. Full-time with benefits and a salary that I think you'll find competitive." Marcus's heart raced. "I'd need flexibility for Maya, school pickups, doctor appointments, the occasional sick day." "Of course, we can structure the role around your family commitments, work from home options, flexible hours." It sounded perfect. Too perfect. "What about Richard?" Marcus asked. "He seemed opposed to my hiring." There was a slight pause. "Richard has input but not final say. This is my decision, and James supports it completely." Marcus thought about the medical bills still piled on his desk, about Maya's empty college fund, about the repairs his truck desperately needed, about the look on his daughter's face when she'd had to tell classmates they couldn't afford the school ski trip. "When do you need my decision?" "Take the day. Call me tomorrow." After hanging up, Marcus sat in his truck for a long moment. This job would change everything: their financial situation, his professional identity, their future prospects. But change, even positive change, came with risks. New environments, new expectations, new politics to navigate. On impulse, he drove to the university campus where he'd once taught. He hadn't been back since leaving, avoiding the memories, the awkward encounters with former colleagues. The linguistics department was housed in an old brick building with ivy-covered walls. Marcus parked nearby and walked the familiar path. Marcus Thompson. He turned to see David Abernathy, his former department chair, staring at him in surprise. "Dave, good to see you." Over coffee, Marcus explained the job offer. The potential return to using his expertise. The strange circumstances that had led to this opportunity. Dave listened intently. "You know," Dave said finally, "when you left, we all understood. Family comes first. But the department lost something valuable when you resigned. I didn't have much choice. I know that now." Dave leaned forward. "Take the corporate job, Marcus. Not just for the money, though. God knows you deserve financial stability. Take it because your mind is too valuable to waste fixing toilets." "Sarah would have said the same thing," Marcus said quietly. "She always told me I was meant to be a scholar." "Smart woman. Maya is stable now, right?" "She's resilient, more than I am sometimes." "Then it's time for you to start rebuilding too. Not just financially, intellectually, professionally." Dave glanced at his watch. "Sarah wouldn't have wanted you to stay stuck. You know that." Marcus did know. He'd known for a while now. The rest of the day passed in a blur of small repair jobs, each one reinforcing Dave's point. He was competent at manual work, but it didn't engage his mind or feed his soul the way linguistics had. By the time he picked up Maya from school, his decision was made. "Guess what, sweetheart? I got offered the job at Miss Morgan's company." Maya's face lit up. "Really? Are you going to take it?" "I think so. What do you think?" She considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. "Will you wear a suit, like when you were a professor?" "Probably yes." "Good. You look handsome in a suit. Mommy always said so." The casual reference to Sarah no longer caused the sharp pain it once had. Now it was bittersweet, a reminder that even in absence, she remained part of their family. If I take this job, some things will change. We'll have more money for things like new shoes and maybe that art camp you wanted. Maya's eyes widened. Really, art camp? Really? But I'll still pick you up from school every day. We'll still have our weekend pancakes and movie nights. Promise. Pinky promise. They locked fingers solemnly. That evening, Marcus called Sophia. I'll accept the position. Excellent. He could hear genuine pleasure in her voice. When can you start? Monday. I have a few jobs to finish up this week. Monday is perfect. There was a pause. Marcus, I'd like to invite you and Maya to dinner at my home this Friday. Nothing formal, just James and a few team members discussing the Schneider project. It would be a good chance for you to meet everyone. The invitation surprised him. You want me to bring Maya to a business dinner? James is bringing his children. They're teenagers, but Maya wouldn't be the only child. And my house has quite the game room that the kids usually monopolize. Marcus hesitated. This was moving beyond professional into something more personal. But Maya had been begging for more social opportunities, and the chance to meet James's daughter, who she'd apparently heard about from Sophia, seemed like a positive development. We'd be delighted. Friday evening found Marcus and Maya standing before a house that seemed more like a small hotel than a private residence. The Morgan family's home was a sprawling estate in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, manicured grounds, a gated entrance, and architectural details that whispered old money. Daddy, Maya whispered, her eyes enormous. It's like a castle. It's certainly impressive. Marcus agreed, feeling increasingly out of place despite his best suit. Sophia greeted them on the veranda dressed in white linen pants and a blue top, more relaxed than her office attire, but no less elegant. Welcome, she said warmly. I'm so glad you could come. Maya, usually shy with new adults, smiled up at Sophia. Your house is beautiful, Miss Morgan, like the pictures in my fairy tale books. Sophia laughed, a genuine sound Marcus hadn't heard from her before. Thank you, Maya. Would you like a tour? The good news about a big house is there are lots of places to explore. As they moved through the mansion, Marcus observed how naturally Sophia interacted with his daughter. Not with the condescension adults often showed children, but with genuine interest in Maya's observations. By the time they reached the game room where James's teenagers were engrossed in video games, Maya was chattering comfortably about her art projects. Go ahead and join them, Sophia encouraged when James's daughter Lily waved Maya over. They don't bite. Once Maya was settled, Sophia led Marcus back to the main gathering. The dinner conversation flowed easily, focusing primarily on the Schneider negotiations. The problem isn't just language, Marcus explained at one point. It's cultural perception. Germans and Americans have fundamentally different approaches to business relationships. Germans build trust slowly through demonstrated competence. Americans expect trust up front. James nodded. That explains why they keep requesting more technical specifications. We thought they were stalling. They're not. They're being thorough. If you acknowledge that as a strength rather than a delaying tactic, you'll make progress. The discussion continued through dessert. Marcus found himself fully engaged in a way he hadn't been in years. This was what he had missed: intellectual challenge, meaningful work, the satisfaction of applying expertise to real problems. Then, the atmosphere shifted. A sleek car pulled into the driveway. Richard Peterson emerged, dressed as if for a country club. Sophia, James mentioned the family was out here today. Thought I'd stop by. His gaze fell on Marcus, and displeasure flashed across his features before being masked with a tight smile. Thompson didn't realize this was a staff outing. Marcus and his daughter are here as friends, Sophia corrected coolly. Maya and Lily have become quite close. Richard's intrusion changed the atmosphere completely. He dominated lunchtime conversation with golf stories and not-so-subtle name-dropping. He positioned himself between Sophia and Marcus, effectively cutting off their earlier easy rapport. Maya, who had been animated and chatty, grew quiet in Richard's presence. When he asked her a condescending question about school, she answered politely, but briefly, then asked to be excused. "Bright kid," Richard observed after she left. "Must get that from her mother." The deliberate slight wasn't lost on Marcus, but he refused to take the bait. "Keisha was brilliant," he agreed calmly. PhD in microbiology, specialized in antibiotic resistance research. Richard seemed thrown by Marcus's composure. Well, tragic situation. Yes, it was. When Richard finally departed, everyone visibly relaxed. "I apologize for him," Sophia said. "He has a talent for imposing himself where he's not invited." "Does he often show up at family gatherings?" Marcus asked. "Never," James answered, joining them. "That's what makes this bizarre. Richard has never shown interest in our family time before." The implication was clear. Richard had come specifically because Marcus was there. On the drive home, Maya was quiet for a while before speaking. "Daddy, I didn't like that man, the one who works with you and Miss Morgan." "Mr. Peterson. Why not? He talks to you like Mrs. Harmon talks to Mr. Ramirez who cleans our school. Like you're not as important as him." She paused. "And he kept trying to stand between you and Miss Morgan. Like he didn't want you to talk to each other." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Sometimes adults have complicated feelings about each other, especially at work." "Does he not like you because you're smarter than him?" Marcus had to smile at the comparison. "Maybe something like that. Tyler Jenkins doesn't like me because I get better grades, but Mommy always said being smart isn't something to apologize for." "Your mom was right about most things." What Marcus didn't say, what he was only beginning to understand, was that Richard's hostility went far deeper than professional jealousy. And the confrontation building between them was only just beginning. Marcus's first month at Morgan Medical Technologies passed in a whirlwind of activity that felt like waking from a long sleep. His office, an actual office with a door and his name on it, overlooked the city skyline. Some mornings he would pause at the window and remember the view from his truck as he drove between repair jobs. The contrast still felt surreal. The Schneider merger had become his primary focus. He spent hours reviewing technical documents, participating in conference calls with German executives, providing cultural context that the MMT team had been missing for months. The work was challenging in ways he'd forgotten he craved, intellectually demanding, but with practical applications that gave immediate satisfaction. Maya was thriving too. The steady income meant new clothes, art supplies, and enrollment in the Saturday art program at the community center that Lily had recommended. Each evening she would greet Marcus with eager questions about his day at the big building, fascinated by stories of international calls and important meetings. "Did you speak German today, Daddy?" "I did." "Can you teach me something?" He would teach her a new phrase, delighting in her perfect pronunciation. Sometimes she would say, "Mommy taught me that one already." And the bittersweet reminder of Sarah would wash over him, painful, yes, but also precious. Only Richard Peterson cast a shadow over Marcus's new life. The CFO maintained a cool distance that had hardened into something more toxic with each passing week. In meetings, Richard would challenge Marcus's recommendations, question his expertise, or dismiss his input with practiced corporate indifference. "I don't understand why we need a cultural consultant to tell us how to talk to Germans," Richard remarked during one strategy session. "They speak English. We speak English. It's not complicated." "It's not about language itself," Marcus explained patiently. "It's about cultural frameworks that shape how language is interpreted. Germans value precision and thorough analysis. Americans prefer efficiency and direct action. Neither approach is wrong, but misunderstanding these differences has real business consequences." James nodded. "Marcus's insights have already improved our communication with Schneider. They've moved forward on 3 provisions they were previously blocking." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Fascinating. Perhaps our new linguistics guru could also explain why they're still holding up the technology transfer agreement." Or is that cultural too? The tension was palpable. Marcus maintained his composure. Years of teaching hostile undergraduates had prepared him for worse. Actually, yes. Their hesitation reflects a fundamental German business value, Gründlichkeit, thoroughness. They're not stalling. They're being diligent. If we acknowledge that rather than pushing against it, we'll make more progress. Sophia had been quiet during the exchange. Now she spoke, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had heard enough. Marcus is right. I've reviewed the correspondence. Each time we press for faster decisions, they respond with requests for more detail. We're working against each other. Richard leaned back, clearly unconvinced, but unwilling to challenge Sophia directly. Well, if our CEO thinks German bedtime stories are worth the expense, who am I to argue? I just manage the money. The meeting continued, but Marcus felt the weight of Richard's animosity like a physical presence. This wasn't professional disagreement. This was personal hatred wearing a corporate mask. Later, Sophia addressed it directly as they walked back to their offices. Don't let Richard get to you. He's territorial about the Schneider deal. It was his project before you came on board. I'm not trying to take credit for anything, Marcus assured her. I'm just doing my job. I know that. James knows that. More importantly, the Schneider executives know that. She paused. Your approach is working, Marcus. The merger is making progress for the first time in months. Her confidence was reassuring, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Richard's opposition went beyond professional rivalry. There was something personal in his antagonism, a quality of resentment that seemed disproportionate to any workplace dispute. The following week brought the answer, though not in any way Marcus could have anticipated. Richard had arranged a surprise presentation for the executive team, insisting that Marcus demonstrate his value by analyzing a complex technical document from Schneider, one he'd never seen before. I thought it would be instructive to see our linguistic expert in action, Richard explained smoothly, handing Marcus a 20-page document dense with medical terminology. The Schneider team sent this overnight. We need to understand their concerns about the cardiac monitoring software integration. He checked his watch. You have 30 minutes to prepare. It was a blatant setup designed to humiliate Marcus in front of the leadership team. The document was filled with highly specialized jargon that would challenge even a native German speaker without proper context. Sophia started to object, but Marcus shook his head slightly. 30 minutes, he said calmly. I'll need a quiet room and access to MMT's technical glossary. For the next half hour, Marcus worked with the focused intensity he'd once brought to academic research, breaking down terminology, identifying key concerns, mapping them to cultural communication patterns. When he returned to the conference room, the entire executive team was waiting, along with 2 video screens showing Schneider executives who had apparently been invited to observe. Richard's smile was triumphant. Dr. Thompson, the floor is yours. Marcus took a breath and began his presentation not in English, but in flawless German, addressing the Schneider executives directly. He outlined their concerns, as expressed in the document, acknowledged the thoroughness of their analysis, and explained precisely how MMT's technology would integrate with their existing systems. He didn't just translate. He reframed the entire discussion in terms that resonated with German business values: precision, reliability, long-term stability. The German executives' surprise quickly transformed into engagement. They asked questions. Marcus answered with technical accuracy and cultural awareness. By the end of the session, they had agreed to move forward with the software integration, a sticking point that had delayed the merger for weeks. When the call ended, the conference room was silent. Then James began to applaud. The rest of the executive team followed. Only Richard remained stone-faced, his attempted humiliation having backfired spectacularly. I believe that demonstrates the value of cultural consultation quite effectively, Sophia said, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. Thank you, Marcus. Exceptional work. As the meeting broke up, Marcus caught Richard's eye. The CFO's expression had hardened from smug anticipation to cold fury. This isn't over, Richard said quietly, his voice pitched so only Marcus could hear. You don't belong here, and I'm going to prove it." That evening, Marcus shared a carefully edited version of the day's events with Maya over dinner. "So you had to read a super hard paper in German really fast?" she asked, impressed. "Yes, and then explain it to everyone, including the German scientists who wrote it. That's like when Mrs. Barton gives us surprise spelling tests, but way harder. A bit like that. Did you pass?" "I think I did." Maya nodded sagely. "Mommy would be proud. She always said you were the smartest person she knew." The weight of those words, Keisha's faith in him echoing through their daughter, steadied something in Marcus that had been shaking since Richard's threat. Whatever came next, he would face it. For Maya. For the life they were building. 3 weeks later, the Schneider executives requested a face-to-face meeting in Boston to finalize key aspects of the merger. James asked Marcus to attend as cultural liaison, a role that would put him front and center in the negotiations. "We need you there," James insisted. "The Germans specifically asked for you. They were impressed with your handling of the technical document review. I'd need to arrange care for Maya. These meetings could run late." "Bring her," Sophia suggested unexpectedly. "We're staying at the Mandarin Oriental. There's a pool room service, movies on demand. Maya would love it, and the meeting shouldn't run past dinner. I couldn't ask you to. It's a business expense. All employees attending the negotiation have accommodations covered." The prospect of a business trip thrilled Maya beyond measure. The idea of staying in a luxury hotel while Daddy attended important meetings made her feel grown up and special. "Can I bring my sketch pad?" Lily says drawing what you see in new places helps you remember them. "Absolutely." The night before their departure, Marcus's phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Dr. Thompson. This is Charlotte Williams, Keisha's sister." Marcus froze. Charlotte had never approved of his decision to leave academia. She had argued bitterly that Keisha would have wanted him to maintain his career even during her illness. After the funeral, their relationship had deteriorated to occasional terse emails about Maya's well-being. "Charlotte, this is unexpected. I'm in town for a conference. I thought I might see Maya while I'm here." "We're actually leaving for Boston tomorrow. A business trip." "Business trip." The surprise in her voice was unmistakable. "I thought you were doing handyman work." "I've taken a new position. Medical technology company. Using my linguistics background for international negotiations." There was a pause that felt loaded with meaning. "Well, that's good to hear, Marcus. It's about time you got back to using your education." Something in her tone bothered him, but he couldn't identify what. "We'll be back Thursday. Perhaps you could visit then." "That would work." Another pause. "This new job, it's going well." "Very well." "Good, that's good." After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of Maya's bed, troubled by the conversation. Charlotte's sudden interest after months of minimal contact felt wrong somehow. Her questions about his job seemed pointed. But that was impossible. Charlotte didn't know anyone in his current circles. Just a coincidence. She was in town, wanted to see her niece, and was surprised about his career change. Still, as he helped Maya pack her small suitcase, Marcus couldn't shake a vague sense of unease. The next morning, pushed those concerns aside. Maya was up early, vibrating with excitement, dressed in her nicest outfit, and clutching her suitcase with the gravity of a seasoned traveler. The company car that picked them up, another business expense Sophia had arranged, sent Maya into fits of wonder. "Is this what it was like when you were a professor, Daddy? Did you go on trips to important meetings?" "Sometimes. Academic conferences mostly. But they weren't usually this fancy." At the airport, they met Sophia, James, and Richard, who looked distinctly displeased to see Maya accompanying them. "I wasn't aware we were bringing children to business negotiations," he remarked acidly. "Maya will be enjoying the hotel amenities while we work." Sophia explained her tone, leaving no room for discussion. James's assistant has arranged childcare during the meetings. Richard's expression suggested he had more to say, but he held his tongue, turning his attention to his phone with exaggerated focus. On the flight, Maya sat between Marcus and Sophia, chattering about her first airplane ride while James reviewed documents across the aisle. "I've never been to Boston," Maya told Sophia earnestly. "Daddy says there's a special library there with really old books." "The Boston Public Library." Sophia nodded. "It's beautiful. Perhaps we can visit if the meetings end early." Marcus watched their interaction with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. The woman who had once dismissed them in a grocery store was now discussing children's literature with his daughter, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The Mandarin Oriental welcomed them with quiet luxury uniformed staff, who remembered names, amenities that anticipated needs, and a suite for Marcus and Maya that was larger than their entire apartment back home. "Daddy, the bathtub has jets," Maya called from the bathroom. "And there are robes, little ones for kids." That evening, Marcus attended a team dinner with some of the Schneider executives, while Maya enjoyed room service and movies with a sitter the hotel had arranged. The dinner progressed smoothly, the conversation flowing easily between business matters and cultural observations. Only Richard seemed disengaged, nursing his drink and checking his phone with increasing frequency. Halfway through the main course, he excused himself to take a call, returning 20 minutes later with an odd expression Marcus couldn't interpret. "Everything all right?" Sophia asked quietly. "Fine," Richard replied, his tone clipped. "Personal matter." But Marcus noticed Richard watching him for the rest of the evening with a calculation that set off warning bells. The next morning's negotiations were held in a sleek conference room at Schneider's American headquarters. Marcus sat between Sophia and James, facing the German executives across a polished table laden with technical documents and legal agreements. The morning session progressed smoothly, with Marcus providing cultural context whenever the discussion threatened to derail over misunderstandings. The Germans responded well to his approach, and by mid-morning break, significant progress had been made. Dr. Klaus Weber, Schneider's chief technology officer, approached Marcus at the refreshment table. "You have a rare gift, Dr. Thompson," he observed in German. "Few Americans truly grasp our perspective. They see our thoroughness as obstruction, our precision as inflexibility." "I had excellent teachers in Heidelberg," Marcus replied, "and I've always believed that language is more than vocabulary. It's a window into how people think." Weber nodded approvingly. "Exactly so. This is why we insisted on your presence." As Weber moved away, Richard sidled up, his expression carefully neutral. "Making friends with the enemy, Thompson. They're not the enemy, they're potential partners." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. I just find it interesting how quickly you've ingratiated yourself, almost as if you've been planning this all along." Before Marcus could respond, James called everyone back to the table. The afternoon session focused on integrating Schneider's proprietary cardiac monitoring software with MMT's existing systems. Here, the cultural differences emerged most strongly. Germans expressing concerns about maintaining standards, while Americans pushed for faster implementation. Marcus found himself fully engaged in the technical discussion, translating concepts across the cultural divide. This was the work he was meant to do. By late afternoon, significant progress had been made. Dr. Weber approached Marcus privately as the teams were packing up. "Whatever internal challenges MMT may be facing," Weber said quietly, "please know that Schneider values your expertise. Should your circumstances ever change, we would be interested in discussing opportunities." The implication was clear. A job offer delicately presented. "How much do you know about our internal challenges?" Marcus asked carefully. "Merely rumors," Weber replied. "But as someone who values clear communication, I felt I should mention it." Back at the hotel, Marcus found Maya engrossed in a new marine biology book, clearly an aquarium purchase from her day with the hotel's childcare program. "Daddy, we saw sharks and giant turtles, and the nice lady who watches kids got us special passes to pet the stingrays." "That sounds amazing, sweetheart." As Maya continued chattering about her adventures, Marcus's phone buzzed. Sophia, can you meet me in the hotel bar in 20 minutes? Something's come up. It's important. The bar was dimly lit and half empty. Sophia sat alone at a corner table, a glass of untouched wine before her. Her expression was troubled, in a way Marcus hadn't seen before. What's happened? He asked without preamble. Sophia pushed a folder across the table. Richard received this yesterday. He claims it came from an anonymous source. Marcus opened the folder with growing dread. Inside were printouts of emails, his emails from his university account during Keisha's illness, correspondence with department heads, communications with medical insurance representatives, messages to colleagues asking for extensions on research deadlines, private painful exchanges documenting the collapse of his academic career as he struggled to balance teaching with his dying wife. Where did these come from? Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. These are private, from a closed university account. Richard says they raise concerns about your reliability. Sophia replied, her tone making clear she found the explanation dubious. That they show a pattern of professional difficulties that might affect your work with us. Anger flared hot and sudden. These are from 3 years ago, during the worst period of my life. My wife was dying. I know. I'm not endorsing Richard's interpretation. I'm telling you what he's claiming. Marcus forced himself to breathe, to think past the violation he felt. This is a deliberate attack. But how did he get these? Accessing private university emails without authorization is potentially criminal. That's what concerns me most. Sophia's expression was grave. This level of investigation isn't normal, even for Richard. It's not just inappropriate, it's illegal. I know. She rubbed her temple. But there's more. Richard claims he has information that you were in contact with Schneider executives before joining MMT, that your chance encounter with me at Whole Foods might not have been chance at all. The accusation was so absurd that Marcus actually laughed. That's ridiculous. I was a handyman fixing leaky faucets before I met you. I had no connection to Schneider or any medical technology company. I believe you. But Richard is presenting this to James as a serious concern, that you might be some kind of corporate plant positioned to influence the merger negotiations. To what end? Why would Schneider plant someone who's helping the merger succeed? According to Richard, to ensure terms more favorable to their side. He's suggesting your cultural interpretations might be deliberately skewed. Marcus shook his head. This is beyond professional rivalry. This is character assassination. I agree, which is why I canceled dinner with the Schneider team tonight. I wanted to warn you before Richard takes this further. She paused. He's requesting a formal investigation. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. An investigation would mean suspension, potentially termination. He would lose the job that had finally allowed him to rebuild stability for Maya to use his expertise meaningfully again to begin moving forward after years of grief. Why does he hate me this much? Marcus asked quietly. What have I done to deserve this level of hostility? Sophia looked away. I think it's not about you specifically, Marcus. It's about me. I don't understand. She sighed. Richard and I have a history. We were engaged, briefly, about 5 years ago. It ended poorly. The revelation stunned him. I had no idea. We've maintained a professional relationship since then. He's excellent at his job, whatever his personal issues. She paused. But he's always been possessive, even after all this time. Understanding dawned. And he sees my relationship with you as a threat. Our friendship, Sophia corrected, though something in her eyes suggested the distinction mattered to her. He's noticed that we've become close, that I value your input, your company. So this isn't about the Schneider merger at all. It's personal. I believe so, yes. Marcus processed this, his mind racing through implications. What happens now? There will be a formal review. You'll continue working on the negotiations the Germans specifically asked for you, which actually undermines Richard's theory. But the board will examine his allegations. And if they find them credible, Sophia met his gaze directly. They won't, because they're not. I won't let Richard destroy your career because of his personal vendetta. Her confidence should have been reassuring, but Marcus felt a growing unease. He had rebuilt his life once already from ashes. The prospect of losing everything again, of Maya, having to adjust to another dramatic upheaval, was almost unbearable. I should get back to Maya, he said finally. She had a difficult day yesterday, some incident at the children's program. Concern immediately shifted to his daughter. What happened? Marcus explained the altercation, another child mocking Maya's belief that her mother was watching from heaven, Maya's defensive reaction. Poor Maya, Sophia said with genuine sympathy. Children can be so cruel. She's resilient, more than she should have to be. Back in the suite, Marcus found Maya asleep surrounded by aquarium souvenirs. Her sketchbook lay open beside her, a drawing of 3 figures, a man, a small girl, and a woman with wings standing before the Boston skyline. Family, past and present, together in his daughter's imagination. His phone buzzed, an unknown number with a local area code. Marcus's blood ran cold as he read the text message. Dr. Thompson, this is Marcus Brennan, attorney for Charlotte Williams. She has asked me to inform you that she will be filing for temporary guardianship of Maya upon your return. Given your unstable employment history and questionable judgment, we believe this is in the child's best interest. We can discuss details when you return to town. The room seemed to tilt around him. Charlotte was trying to take Maya. After everything they'd endured, losing Keisha, rebuilding their lives, finally finding stability, his daughter's only remaining family wanted to separate them. And based on the timing, there could be little doubt about who was behind it. Marcus's hands shook as he called James. I need your help. It's about Maya. James listened gravely as Marcus explained the text, the custody threat, his suspicion of Richard's involvement. This is beyond inappropriate, James said finally. If Richard is behind this, using a child as leverage in some twisted vendetta. Can he do this? Can Charlotte take Maya from me? Not based on what you've told me. You're Maya's father, her legal guardian. You haven't done anything to warrant removal. James paused. But legal battles can be messy and expensive, and traumatic for everyone involved. I can't lose her, James. She's everything to me. You won't lose her. I know excellent family law attorneys in Boston. We'll get one on this first thing tomorrow. After hanging up, Marcus checked on Maya again, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest as she slept, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around her. His phone buzzed again. Sophia. James just called. I'm so sorry, Marcus. This is unconscionable. We're meeting with our legal team at 7 a.m. We'll fight this together. The simple message brought unexpected tears to his eyes. From a chance encounter in a grocery store to this moment of crisis, Sophia Morgan had become something he hadn't expected: an ally, a friend, perhaps something more. Marcus moved to the window, looking out over the Boston skyline. Tomorrow would bring legal consultations and continued negotiations. But tonight, in this quiet hotel room with his sleeping daughter, Marcus made a silent vow. He would not let Richard Peterson destroy what he had rebuilt. He would not let Charlotte take Maya from the only parent she had left. Some things were worth fighting for. Some battles could not be conceded. Whatever came next, he would face it with everything he had. For Maya. For the future they deserved. For the family they would always be. Dawn broke over Boston with cold clarity, but Marcus had barely slept. He'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through strategies and contingencies and the quiet terror of potentially losing Maya. By 6:30, he was showered and dressed, watching his daughter sleep peacefully while his world threatened to collapse around her. At precisely 7, A gentle knock came at the suite door. James Morgan stood in the hallway, impeccably dressed, despite the early hour, a leather portfolio under his arm. Behind him stood a woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair, and eyes that had clearly seen every legal maneuver imaginable. "Marcus, this is Eleanor Winters," James said. "She's the best family law attorney in Boston. And a mother who doesn't take kindly to children being used as pawns." Eleanor added, her voice carrying the slight rasp of a lifelong Bostonian. "James briefed me on the situation. May we come in?" They settled in the suite's sitting area, speaking in hushed tones to avoid waking Maya. Marcus explained everything: Charlotte's history of disapproval, her sudden reappearance, the text from her attorney, his suspicions about Richard's involvement. Eleanor listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound notebook. When Marcus finished, she looked up with the focused intensity of a general planning a campaign. "First, let me be absolutely clear. They cannot take Maya from you based on what you've described. You're her father, her legal guardian. There's no evidence of neglect, abuse, or inability to provide care. Everything suggests the opposite. You've made extraordinary sacrifices for your daughter's well-being." The reassurance loosened something tight in Marcus's chest. But Eleanor wasn't finished. "That said, legal proceedings can be messy and traumatic, especially for children. My goal is to prevent this from reaching court at all." She tapped her notebook. "We need to understand Charlotte's motivation. Is she genuinely concerned about Maya's welfare, or is she being manipulated?" "Charlotte never approved of my decision to leave academia," Marcus explained. "She thought I was throwing away my career. After Keisha died, she suggested Maya might be better off living with her while I got back on my feet. And now that you have gotten back on your feet professionally, she's still pursuing custody." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "That suggests external motivation." James checked his watch. "Sophia will be joining us shortly. She's meeting with Richard and the board chairman to address his accusations directly." "Good." Eleanor nodded. "We need to fight this on both fronts. Neutralize Richard's corporate attack while preparing a counter-strategy for Charlotte's custody claim." As if summoned by her name, Sophia appeared at the door. Her expression was a mixture of concern and determination. "Richard's been placed on administrative leave," she announced without preamble. "The chairman agrees his behavior is unprofessional and potentially illegal. They're launching an investigation into how he obtained your private emails." "That's a start," James said, "but it doesn't solve the immediate problem with Charlotte." "Actually, it might." Sophia took a seat beside Marcus, her proximity reassuring. "If Richard is behind Charlotte's sudden custody claim, removing him from the equation could change her approach. Or make her more desperate," Eleanor cautioned. "If she's being manipulated, she may double down when her handler is compromised." A small sound from the bedroom doorway drew everyone's attention. Maya stood there in her pajamas, hair tousled from sleep, eyes wide, as she took in the assembled adults. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "What's happening?" Marcus crossed to her, immediately kneeling to her level. "These are friends who are helping us with some grown-up problems. Nothing for you to worry about." Maya's gaze moved past him to Sophia, who offered a warm smile. "Good morning, Maya. I was hoping you might join me for breakfast downstairs while your dad finishes his meeting. They have chocolate chip pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse." The distraction worked. Maya's face lit up. "Can I, Daddy?" "Of course. Get dressed and brush your teeth first." As Maya scampered to her room, Eleanor spoke quietly. "She seems well-adjusted. Happy. That will matter if this does reach a courtroom." "She is happy," Marcus said firmly. "Despite everything she's been through, despite losing her mother. And I intend to keep it that way." The determination in his voice silenced the room. This wasn't just a client fighting a legal battle. This was a father protecting his child with every resource at his disposal. "We'll need to continue the negotiations with Schneider today," James reminded him gently. "The Germans specifically requested your presence." "I'll be there. This merger is too important to let Richard's vendetta derail it." Sophia nodded. I'll take Maya to breakfast and keep her occupied this morning. That should give you time for both the negotiations and whatever legal preparations Eleanor needs." Marcus felt a surge of gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. "Thank you," he said, simply the words inadequate for the depth of feeling behind them. Maya returned dressed in her favorite outfit, hair hastily brushed but still unruly. Sophia took her hand with natural ease. "Ready for those pancakes? Can we get extra syrup?" "I think that can be arranged." As the door closed behind them, Eleanor turned to Marcus with renewed focus. "Now, let's talk strategy. I've prepared a cease and desist letter to Charlotte's attorney outlining the legal ramifications of pursuing a baseless custody claim, including potential countersuits for emotional distress and interference with parental rights. Will that stop her? It might give her pause, especially if she's being manipulated." Eleanor tapped her pen thoughtfully. "But we need more. We need to understand the full extent of their collusion. James, can your corporate security team investigate Richard's communications?" "Already in progress," James confirmed. "We're focusing on external contacts in the past month, looking for connections to Charlotte Williams or her attorney." The meeting continued for another hour, laying out contingencies for every scenario. By the time they finished, Marcus felt more grounded. The initial panic had been replaced by resolute determination. This was a battle he could fight, not alone, but with allies who brought expertise and resources he could never have marshaled on his own. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Maya, having best pancakes ever. Going to aquarium after. Don't worry about us. Focus on negotiations. We've got this." Attached was a photo of Maya, her face alight with delight, a forkful of chocolate chip pancake halfway to her mouth. The simple moment of childhood joy amid crisis reminded Marcus exactly what he was fighting for. The boardroom at Morgan Medical Technology's Boston satellite office was imposing mahogany table leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. 9 board members sat in judgment, their expressions carefully neutral, as Sophia presented evidence against Richard Peterson. Corporate espionage, unauthorized access to private records, interference with an employee's family relationships for leverage. She laid out each accusation with methodical precision. These actions go beyond unprofessional. They expose MMT to significant legal liability and threaten the Schneider merger, the cornerstone of our European expansion strategy. James followed with a detailed timeline connecting Richard's hostile behavior to specific advances in the merger negotiations. "The pattern is clear," he concluded. Richard was attempting to maintain personal control over the Schneider relationship. When Dr. Thompson's expertise accelerated progress beyond Richard's involvement, his opposition became more extreme. When Marcus's turn came, he spoke with the measured clarity that had once made him an effective professor. "I came to MMT through unusual circumstances, but my commitment to this company and the Schneider merger has been absolute. Richard Peterson's actions have not only threatened my professional standing, but have created a baseless custody challenge for my daughter, who has already endured the loss of her mother." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the room. "I respectfully request that the board take appropriate action to address this breach of corporate and personal ethics." Eleanor then outlined the legal implications, her presentation crisp and authoritative. "Mr. Peterson's actions expose MMT to potential liability for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with parental rights. Furthermore, his unauthorized access to private university emails may constitute computer fraud under federal law." Throughout these presentations, Richard sat stone-faced at the far end of the table, his attorney beside him. When given the opportunity to respond, his defense was surprisingly weak, vague assertions about due diligence and legitimate concerns that sounded hollow against the specific evidence presented. The board chairman, a distinguished woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and penetrating eyes, called for a closed session to deliberate. Marcus, Sophia, James, Eleanor, Richard, and his attorney were asked to wait outside. The corridor felt like a neutral zone between warring factions. Richard stood apart, conferring in low tones with his lawyer. Marcus found himself gravitating towards Sophia, drawing strength from her calm confidence. "Whatever happens in there," she said quietly, "we still have the Schneider negotiations this afternoon. Are you ready?" The question was a lifeline pulling him back to work that mattered. "Yes," he answered with more certainty than he felt. The merger is too important to let personal conflicts derail it. Sophia's smile held approval and something warmer. "That's why you belong at MMT, Marcus, not just your skills, your commitment." Before he could respond, the boardroom doors opened. The chairman's expression revealed nothing as she invited them back inside. After reviewing the evidence presented, she began once everyone was seated. "The board has reached several conclusions." Marcus held his breath. First, Richard Peterson's investigation into Dr. Thompson's background exceeded appropriate professional boundaries and potentially violated legal and ethical standards. Second, his communication with Dr. Thompson's former sister-in-law regarding custody matters constitutes unacceptable interference in an employee's personal life. Richard's face had gone pale, his knuckles white where he gripped the armrests. Effective immediately, Mr. Peterson is terminated from his position as Chief Financial Officer of Morgan Medical Technologies. Company devices and access credentials will be surrendered before leaving the building. A severance package reflecting his years of service, but accounting for the circumstances of his departure, will be processed by Human Resources. The pronouncement fell like a gavel. Richard's expression shifted from shock to fury, but his attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm, whispering urgently. "Dr. Thompson." The chairman continued, turning to Marcus. "The board extends its sincere apologies for the distress these events have caused you and your daughter. We value your contributions to MMT, particularly to the Schneider negotiations. A formal letter to this effect will be provided for your records should it be needed for any legal proceedings related to your daughter's welfare." "Thank you, Madam Chairman," Marcus replied, relief flooding through him. "I appreciate the board's thorough consideration." As the meeting concluded, Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This isn't over," he said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "You'll regret this, Sophia, all of you." "That's enough, Richard," James said firmly. "Security will escort you to clear out your office. Don't make this worse than it already is." As Richard was led away, the tension in the room gradually dissipated. Board members approached Marcus individually, offering personal apologies and words of support. The genuine concern they expressed confirmed what he'd begun to suspect: he had found not just employment at MMT, but a professional community that valued integrity alongside expertise. The Schneider negotiations that afternoon proceeded with renewed energy. Without Richard's obstructive presence, the American team moved with greater confidence. By day's end, the framework for the merger was complete, only final legal reviews remaining before signatures. Dr. Weber sought Marcus out as the teams were packing up. "I understand there have been changes at MMT today." He said, his tone neutral, but his eyes observant. "Yes," Marcus acknowledged. "Some internal restructuring that will ultimately strengthen the company." Weber nodded, satisfied. "Good. Stability is important in a partnership, as is knowing when to remove problematic elements." He extended his hand. "We look forward to working with you in the implementation phase, Dr. Thompson. Your role in bridging our companies has been invaluable." Back at the hotel, Marcus found Sophia in the lobby with Maya, who was surrounded by aquarium souvenirs and takeout containers. "Daddy," Maya launched herself at him. "We saw sharks and giant turtles and jellyfish, and Miss Morgan got us special passes to pet the stingrays." "That sounds amazing." Marcus caught her in a hug that was perhaps tighter longer than usual. The simple physical reassurance of her presence, safe and happy, steadied something in him that had been trembling since Charlotte's threat. "Maya is a natural marine biologist," Sophia observed. "She asked the most insightful questions. The staff was impressed. Mommy always said the ocean is like space, but easier to visit, Maya explained seriously. Full of undiscovered things. Your mom was very smart, Sophia agreed, and she'd be so proud of you today. The comment delivered with simple sincerity brought unexpected tears to Marcus's eyes. How did it go? Sophia asked quietly once Maya had returned to examining her new treasures. Richard's terminated. The board issued a formal apology. Marcus shook his head slowly. I still can't quite believe it. Believe it. You earned this, Marcus. Every bit of it. That evening, after Maya had fallen asleep, clutching a stuffed octopus from the aquarium gift shop, Marcus's phone rang. Charlotte's number. He answered with cautious formality. Charlotte. What the hell, Marcus? Her voice was tight with anger. A cease and desist legal threats. This isn't like you. Filing for custody of Maya without even speaking to me first isn't like you either, he countered, keeping his voice low. What's really going on here, Charlotte? There was a pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. I'm concerned about Maya's welfare. That's all. No, it's not. Marcus's patience had reached its limit. For 2 years you've kept your distance. Occasional emails, birthday and Christmas gifts. Now suddenly you're filing for emergency custody. Something changed, and I think that something is named Richard Peterson. The silence that followed told him he'd hit a nerve. I don't know what you're talking about, Charlotte finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. A man approached you recently, didn't he? Expressed concerns about my ability to care for Maya. Maybe suggested I was unstable or that my new job was putting her at risk. Marcus pressed forward. He offered to help with legal expenses. Made it all sound so reasonable. You don't understand. Charlotte's voice was suddenly small. He had documents, Marcus. Emails from your university account. Reports about your declining performance during Keisha's illness. He said you were on the verge of being fired for misconduct before you resigned. The calculated cruelty of Richard's manipulation took Marcus's breath away. Charlotte, listen to me. Those emails are being taken completely out of context. Yes, I struggled professionally while Keisha was dying. Anyone would have. But there was no misconduct. No impending termination. He forced himself to stay calm. Richard Peterson is manipulating you because he has a personal vendetta against me and my employer. He was fired today for his actions. Fired? Surprise colored her voice. The board of directors terminated him for corporate espionage and interference with my personal life. His investigation into my background was illegal. His contact with you was part of a scheme to sabotage a $50 million merger. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. That's how manipulation works. Marcus softened his tone slightly. Charlotte, I know you loved Keisha. I know you want what's best for Maya. But using her as a weapon in someone else's vendetta isn't protecting her. It's hurting her. The silence stretched longer this time. I want to see Maya, Charlotte said finally. Not for legal reasons, just as her aunt. To see for myself that she's okay. It was a retreat, though not a complete surrender. Marcus considered his options carefully. We'll be home Friday, he said. You can come to our apartment for dinner that evening. Just you. No attorneys, no agenda, just family. Agreed. Relief was evident in her voice. And Marcus, if what you're saying about this man is true, I'm sorry. I really thought I was acting in Maya's best interest. I know you did. That's the only reason I'm willing to give you a chance to make this right. After hanging up, Marcus immediately called Eleanor to update her. This could be a positive turn, the attorney observed. If Charlotte is backing away from Richard's influence, we may resolve the custody threat without court involvement, but proceed carefully. Have your apartment looking its best. Emphasize the stability and happiness of Maya's life. I understand. And Marcus, I'd suggest having a friend present. Perhaps Ms. Morgan. Charlotte should meet the people who are part of Maya's regular life now. The suggestion made sense, though Marcus hesitated at involving Sophia in yet another aspect of his personal crisis. She had already gone far beyond professional courtesy, but there was no denying that her presence had become significant to him and to Maya both. The flight home the next morning was subdued but hopeful. Maya chattered about Boston and the aquarium and the fancy hotel pancakes, while Marcus allowed himself to feel something he'd been afraid to acknowledge. Relief. Real, profound relief. Richard was gone. The custody threat was weakening. The merger was on track. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the future felt like something to anticipate rather than endure. Friday evening arrived with a mix of anxiety and hope. Marcus had spent hours cleaning their small apartment. Not that it was dirty, but he wanted everything perfect for Charlotte's visit. Maya had helped arranging her artwork on the refrigerator and setting out her best drawings to show her aunt. "Is Aunt Charlotte going to like our home?" Maya asked, smoothing the pillows on the couch for the third time. "I think so, sweetheart. But what matters most is that she sees how happy you are here." "I am happy." Maya looked up at him with eyes that held too much wisdom for an 8-year-old. "Happier than before, when you were sad all the time." The simple observation cut straight to Marcus's heart. "I was sad for a while," he admitted. "After Mommy died. We both were. But now you smile more, like when you used to teach. Miss Morgan makes you smile." Before Marcus could respond to that particular observation, there was a knock at the door. Charlotte Williams stood in the hallway, her expression uncertain. She was thinner than Marcus remembered, lines of stress around her eyes that hadn't been there at Keisha's funeral. "Marcus, thank you for seeing me." "Come in." She stepped inside, her gaze moving slowly around the apartment. Taking in the modest furniture, the carefully arranged photos of Keisha on the bookshelf, Maya's artwork covering every available wall space. "Aunt Charlotte!" Maya bounded over for a hug. "I have so much to show you. I made drawings of Boston and the aquarium and the hotel where we stayed." Charlotte's expression softened as she embraced her niece. "You've gotten so big and so beautiful, just like your mother." "Everyone says that," Maya agreed solemnly. "Daddy says I have her smile." "You do." Charlotte's voice caught. "You really do." As Maya dragged her aunt toward the refrigerator gallery of artwork, another knock came at the door. Sophia stood in the hallway holding a bottle of wine and looking slightly nervous, an expression Marcus had never seen on her before. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all. Please come in." Charlotte looked up as Sophia entered, her eyes narrowing slightly with recognition. "Charlotte, this is Sophia Morgan, my employer and friend." "We've heard about each other, I think," Sophia said, extending her hand. "It's nice to finally meet you." Charlotte took the offered hand, her grip hesitant. "You're the woman from the grocery store, the one who insulted your brother-in-law in German and had my assumptions thoroughly corrected," Sophia finished. "Yes, not my finest moment." The honesty seemed to disarm Charlotte slightly. "Marcus told me about that. I'm not proud of it, but I am grateful it led to meeting Marcus and Maya. They've become important to me." Dinner was an awkward affair at first, too much history and hurt feelings in the room for easy conversation. But Maya, oblivious to the adult tensions, chattered happily about school and art class and her new friend Lily. "She's teaching me to draw manga style," Maya explained, showing Charlotte her latest attempts. "Her dad works with Daddy's company too." "You seem to have made a lot of new friends," Charlotte observed carefully. "Lots. And Daddy's happier now. He wears suits again and talks about important things on the phone, and sometimes he speaks German, which sounds really cool." Charlotte looked at Marcus with something approaching wonder. "You really have rebuilt your life." "We've rebuilt it together," Marcus corrected gently. "Maya and me. It took time. It took struggle. But we did it." "With help," Sophia added quietly. "Sometimes the help you least expect." After dinner, while Maya showed Charlotte her room, Her real room, with her own bed and her own bookshelf and walls covered in her own art. Sophia helped Marcus with the dishes. "How do you think it's going?" she asked quietly. "Better than I expected. She's seeing Maya as she really is. Happy, healthy, loved." "Because she is all those things." Sophia handed him a plate to dry. "You've done an amazing job with her, Marcus. Keisha would be proud." "That means a lot, especially from you." They worked in comfortable silence for a moment before Sophia spoke again. "When Richard first made his accusations, I was terrified. Not for the company, for you. For Maya. The thought of what he was trying to do. But you stopped him. We stopped him. Together." She met his eyes. "That's how it works, Marcus. That's how it should work. People supporting each other through the hard parts." Charlotte returned from Maya's room, her expression thoughtful. "She asked if I wanted to see her mommy box," Charlotte said quietly. "The one with Keisha's photos and letters and the bracelet she wore on your wedding day." Marcus nodded. "We look through it together sometimes, when she wants to remember." "She's not trying to forget her mother." "Never. Keisha will always be part of our lives, part of who Maya is." Marcus gestured to the photo wall. "We talk about her all the time. The good memories, the love. That doesn't disappear just because we're moving forward." Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. "Richard Peterson told me you were erasing Keisha from Maya's life, that you'd moved on too quickly, that you were unstable and distracted and putting your career ahead of her needs. And now I see a man who has honored my sister's memory by raising their daughter with love and stability." Charlotte's eyes glistened. "I see a little girl who is happy and healthy and surrounded by people who care about her. I see a home that feels like a home even if it's small." "So you'll drop the custody claim?" Charlotte nodded slowly. "I'll call my attorney in the morning. I'm sorry, Marcus, for all of it. I was so angry after Keisha died. Angry at God, angry at the universe, angry at you for not being able to save her. When that man came to me with his evidence, I wanted to believe it. I wanted someone to blame." "Grief makes us do things we regret," Marcus said. "I understand that better than most." "Maya is lucky to have you. Keisha knew that. I should have trusted her judgment." The evening ended with Charlotte promising to visit regularly as an aunt, not a threat. She hugged Maya goodbye with genuine warmth and shook Sophia's hand with something approaching respect. "Take care of them," Charlotte said quietly at the door. "Both of them." "I intend to," Sophia replied. After Charlotte left and Maya had been tucked into bed, Marcus and Sophia sat together on the small couch, the apartment quiet around them. "That went better than I hoped," Marcus said. "Much better." Sophia turned to look at him. "You handled it perfectly. The dignity, the grace. Just like that first day at Whole Foods. I was terrified that first day. So was I." She smiled. "For different reasons, obviously, but terrified nonetheless." "What were you afraid of?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "I was afraid of who I'd become. A woman who could look at a stranger and see only what she wanted to see. A woman who used cruelty to make herself feel better about her own failures." She met his eyes. "You held up a mirror that day, Marcus, and I didn't like what I saw. But you changed. I'm trying to. Every day." She reached over and took his hand. "You make me want to be better. You and Maya both." Marcus looked down at their intertwined fingers, her manicured nails against his still calloused palms. Two worlds that had collided and somehow found they fit together. "When Keisha died," he said slowly, "I thought that part of my life was over. The part where someone sees you, really sees you, not just what you can do for them, but who you are. And now I'm starting to think maybe it's not over after all." Sophia squeezed his hand. "I'm glad," she said simply, Because I see you, Marcus Thompson. Every part of you. And I'm not looking away. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into a life Marcus had stopped believing was possible. The Schneider merger moved toward its final stages with a momentum that seemed almost inevitable now. Without Richard's interference, the negotiations flowed smoothly, two companies finding common ground, bridging cultural differences, building something neither could have achieved alone. Marcus's role had evolved beyond translation into something more substantial. He sat in on strategy meetings, advised on communication approaches, and became the trusted bridge between German precision and American ambition. The work engaged every part of his mind that had lain dormant during the years of grief and struggle. But it was the changes outside the office that transformed him most profoundly. Maya had blossomed in ways that still caught Marcus off guard. The Saturday art program had become the highlight of her week, and her friendship with Lily had deepened into something that looked remarkably like sisterhood. The two girls video-called almost daily, sharing drawings and stories, and the small dramas of elementary school life. "Daddy Lily says her uncle has a boat at the lake house," Maya announced one evening over dinner. "She says maybe we can go again this summer and she'll teach me to water ski." "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Miss Morgan said she'd love to have us back. She said the guest cottage has been empty too long." Maya paused, her fork hovering over her pasta. "Daddy, do you like Miss Morgan?" The question was delivered with the innocent directness only children possess. "I do like her," Marcus answered carefully. "She's become a good friend." Maya nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. "I like her too. She listens when I talk, really listens, not like some grown-ups who just pretend. That's one of the things I appreciate about her." "Mommy would have liked her," Maya added quietly. "I think so anyway. She would have liked that Miss Morgan is smart and kind and that she makes you smile." Marcus set down his own fork, his appetite suddenly complicated by emotion. "What makes you say that?" "Because Mommy wanted you to be happy. She told me so, before she went to heaven." Maya's eyes were serious, too wise for her 8 years. "She said Daddy might be sad for a while, and that was okay. But she made me promise to help you find happy again. She said that in the hospital, when she was really tired but wanted to talk anyway." Maya reached across the table and patted his hand with the solemnity of a much older soul. "I think we found it, Daddy. The happy. Don't you?" Marcus couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He simply nodded, covering her small hand with his own. That night, after Maya was asleep, he found himself looking at the photo of Keisha that sat on his nightstand. Her smile was frozen in time, the same smile Maya had inherited, the one that could light up a room. "I hope she's right," he whispered to the photograph. "I hope you'd approve." The picture didn't answer, of course, but somehow in the quiet of his room, Marcus felt something like permission. The following Saturday brought the lake house visit Maya had been anticipating for weeks. The drive up was filled with chatter about swimming plans and art projects, and whether the stingrays at the Boston Aquarium remembered people who had petted them months ago. Marcus listened with half his attention, the other half occupied with thoughts of the woman who would be waiting when they arrived. His relationship with Sophia had deepened in ways he hadn't fully acknowledged even to himself. They'd had dinner together several times, always with Maya present, always carefully casual. But the conversations had grown longer, more personal. The silences had become comfortable, rather than awkward. And there were moments, glances that lasted a beat too long, touches that lingered at the edge of propriety, that suggested they were both circling something neither had quite named. Sophia was waiting on the veranda when they pulled up, dressed in casual clothes that made her look younger, more approachable. Lily bounded out behind her, already calling Maya's name. "Finally!" Lily grabbed Maya's hand and began pulling her toward the house. "Come see, I set up the art supplies in the sunroom. We're going to paint the view of the lake." The girls disappeared inside their excited chatter, fading into the distance. "They'll be occupied for hours." Sophia observed, watching them go with a smile. Lily's been planning this all week. Maya too. I've heard about nothing else. They stood together in the comfortable silence that had become their norm, looking out over the property. The lake sparkled in the afternoon sun, and somewhere in the distance, a boat motor hummed lazily. James is bringing the kids up tomorrow, Sophia said. But I thought it might be nice to have a quiet evening first, just the four of us. That sounds perfect. She turned to face him fully, something vulnerable in her expression. Marcus, I wanted to talk to you about something. About us. His heart rate accelerated. I've been thinking about the same thing. Have you? It's hard not to. He chose his words carefully. These past few months, you've become important to me, Sophia. Important to Maya. I don't want to do anything that might complicate that. But I also can't pretend I don't feel what I feel. Sophia let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. I wasn't sure if it was just me, if I was reading something that wasn't there. It's not just you. Then what do we do about it? Marcus considered the question seriously. I don't know. There hasn't been anyone since Keisha. I'm not sure I remember how this works. I haven't had anyone serious in years, Sophia admitted. My last relationship ended badly, Richard actually, and after that I threw myself into work. It was easier than risking another failure. And now I find myself thinking about you at odd moments, wondering what you're doing, looking forward to seeing you in ways that go beyond professional interest. She smiled wryly. It's inconvenient, actually. I'm not used to being distracted. I know what you mean. Yesterday I was in a meeting with the Schneider technical team and completely missed a question because I was thinking about the way you laugh when Maya tells her stories. Sophia's smile widened. That's either very flattering or deeply concerning for the merger. Probably both. They laughed together, and something in the air between them shifted. The careful distance they'd maintained seemed suddenly unnecessary, a formality that no longer served its purpose. Maya asked me if I like you, Marcus said. At dinner last week. What did you tell her? The truth, that you've become a good friend. He paused. But I don't think friend is quite the right word anymore. No. Sophia agreed softly. I don't think it is either. She reached out and took his hand, the same gesture from their evening at his apartment, but charged now with intention. I don't want to rush anything, she said. Maya's well-being has to come first, always. Agreed. And work is complicated. There are professional considerations, power dynamics, the appearance of impropriety. All true. But I also don't want to let fear stop me from pursuing something that might be meaningful. She met his eyes directly. I've done that before, chosen the safe path, the logical path. It left me successful and lonely. I've been lonely too, Marcus admitted. Even when I was surrounded by people, even when I was teaching classes of 30 students, the kind of loneliness that comes from not being truly known. And now I feel known, by you, in a way I haven't felt since... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Since Keisha, Sophia finished gently. Yes. That's not a competition, Marcus. What you had with her was real and beautiful. It doesn't diminish what we might have. I know that intellectually, but sometimes the guilt still catches me off guard. Sophia squeezed his hand. Tell me about her. Not the tragic parts, the good parts. The parts that made you fall in love. So he did. Standing on the veranda, with the lake stretching out before them, Marcus told Sophia about meeting Keisha in graduate school, how she'd challenged his assumptions about the boundaries between linguistics and biology, how her laugh had made crowded lecture halls feel intimate, how she'd seen through his academic posturing to the uncertain man underneath. He told her about their wedding, small and imperfect, and exactly what they'd wanted. About the apartment they'd shared, always cluttered with her research papers and his language dictionaries. About the way she'd insisted on reading bedtime stories to Maya in 3 different languages, to give her daughter every advantage. "She sounds remarkable," Sophia said when he finished. She was, and she would have wanted this. He gestured between them. "Not specifically you, she couldn't have predicted you, but this. Someone who sees me, someone who cares about Maya, someone willing to take a chance on whatever we could build together." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she told Maya to help me find happy again." Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. "She knew. Even when she was dying, she knew I would need permission to move forward. That's the kind of woman she was thinking about us, even when she should have been thinking about herself." Sophia wiped at her eyes with her free hand. "She gave you a gift, Marcus. The gift of freedom from guilt. I'm still learning to accept it. Then let me help you." The kiss when it came was gentle, almost tentative. Two people who had been hurt before reaching toward each other with hope and hesitation in equal measure. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus found himself smiling, really smiling, in a way he hadn't in years. "That was overdue," Sophia finished. "I was going to say nice, but overdue works too." She laughed, and the sound was everything he remembered it being, light and genuine, and full of unexpected joy. "Daddy, Miss Morgan." They turned to find Maya and Lily standing in the doorway, paint-stained hands on their hips, identical expressions of knowing amusement on their young faces. "We saw you kissing," Maya announced without preamble. "Lily owes me $5. "You bet on us?" Marcus asked, caught between embarrassment and laughter. "Obviously," Lily said, rolling her eyes with teenage sophistication. "It's been super obvious for like a month." "The whole company thinks you're dating," Maya added helpfully. "Mrs. Margaret from your office told me when she was watching me that one time." Sophia covered her face with her hands. "So much for discretion." "Does this mean Miss Morgan is going to be around more?" Maya asked, her earlier playfulness giving way to something more serious. Marcus knelt down to her level. "What would you think about that?" Maya considered the question with the gravity it deserved. "I think Mommy would be happy. And I think you deserve someone who makes you smile like that." She looked at Sophia. "But if you hurt my daddy, I'll put frogs in your car." "Maya," Marcus started, but Sophia held up her hand. "That's fair," she said solemnly. "I accept your terms." Maya nodded, satisfied with this negotiation. "Okay then. Can we have ice cream for dinner?" "Absolutely not." "Worth a try." She grabbed Lily's hand and disappeared back into the house, their whispered conversation undoubtedly centered on the drama they'd just witnessed. "Did your daughter just threaten me with amphibians?" Sophia asked. "She did. Consider it a sign of affection." "I'll keep that in mind." The summer passed in a blur of merged happiness. The Schneider deal closed in July, a $50 million merger that transformed Morgan Medical Technology's European presence and cemented Marcus's position as an invaluable member of the leadership team. Dr. Weber had become something like a friend, their professional respect evolving into genuine warmth. "You've built something remarkable here," Weber told Marcus during the celebration dinner in Frankfurt. "A bridge between worlds that seemed impossible to connect." "I had help." "Yes, I noticed." Weber's eyes twinkled with European mischief. "The CEO seems particularly invested in your success." "Is it that obvious?" "To anyone with eyes, my friend. But don't worry, it's obvious in a good way. You make each other better. The Germans appreciate such things." Maya had started 4th grade with a confidence that still amazed Marcus. The fearful, grieving child who had clung to him through Keisha's illness and death had transformed into someone bold and curious and full of light. "Daddy," she asked one evening in September, "when you and Miss Morgan get married, do I call her Mom?" Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. "We're not. I haven't. Marriage isn't." "You're going to ask her," Maya said matter-of-factly. "Lily and I already picked out what we're wearing to the wedding." "How do you know I'm going to ask her?" "Because you look at her the way you used to look at Mommy, like she's the most important person in the room." Maya shrugged. It's not complicated, Daddy. She was right, of course. Children usually were about the things that mattered most. Marcus had been thinking about it for weeks. The ring he'd noticed in an antique store window, the conversations they'd had about futures and family, and what they both wanted. He hadn't found the words yet, hadn't found the perfect moment. But Maya's certainty clarified something he'd been avoiding. He loved Sophia Morgan, completely and without reservation. Not as a replacement for Keisha that could never happen, but as something new. A different love for a different season of his life. And she loved him too. He could see it in the way she looked at Maya, in the patience she showed when his grief still caught him by surprise, in the 1,000 small ways she had woven herself into the fabric of their lives. October brought Charlotte's visit for Maya's birthday. The relationship between Marcus and his former sister-in-law had healed slowly but genuinely. Charlotte had become a regular presence in Maya's life, calling twice a week, visiting monthly, finally accepting her role as beloved aunt rather than contested guardian. She seems happy, Charlotte observed, watching Maya tear through birthday presents with Lily's help. Really happy. She is. And you, are you happy, Marcus? He considered the question honestly. I didn't think I could be again. After Keisha. But yeah, I'm happy. Happier than I've been in years. Charlotte nodded slowly. I'm glad. Truly. She hesitated. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for the custody threat, but for everything before that. The judgment. The distance. The way I made you feel like you weren't good enough for my sister. Charlotte. Let me finish. Keisha chose you. She loved you until her last breath, and instead of honoring that by supporting you, I let my grief turn into something ugly. Her voice cracked. She would have been so disappointed in me. She would have forgiven you, Marcus said gently, the same way I have. Charlotte wiped her eyes. You're a better person than I deserve. No, I'm just someone who knows what grief can do to people, what it almost did to me. He put a hand on her shoulder. We're family, Charlotte. That's what matters now. Across the room, Maya shrieked with delight over her new art supplies, the professional grade-colored pencils and sketchbook that Sophia had insisted on choosing personally. Daddy, Miss Morgan got me the exact ones real artists use. That's wonderful, sweetheart. She says talent like mine needs proper tools. Maya hugged the pencils to her chest like precious treasure. She says I could be a real artist someday if I keep practicing. Miss Morgan is very smart about these things. Sophia caught his eye across the room, her smile warm with shared understanding. This life they were building piece by piece, moment by moment, was becoming something solid, something real. That night, after the party, guests had left, and Maya was asleep amid a nest of birthday presents. Marcus found Sophia on his small apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights. Thank you for today, he said, joining her. Maya will remember this forever. I wanted it to be special. She deserves special. She loves you, you know. Sophia's expression softened. I love her too. I never expected to feel this way about someone else's child. But Maya... She shook her head. She has this way of making you feel like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. She gets that from her mother. And her father. They stood together in comfortable silence, the city humming quietly below them. Sophia, I've been thinking. About the future. About what I want. About what I hope you want, too. She turned to face him, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes betraying hope. And what have you concluded? Marcus took her hands in his. I spent 3 years rebuilding my life, picking up pieces I thought were shattered beyond repair, learning to be whole again when half of me was missing. He paused, gathering his thoughts. And then I met a woman in a grocery store who looked at me and saw everything wrong, every failure, every inadequacy. Marcus. Let me finish. She saw everything wrong, and then she saw past it. She saw the father trying his best, the scholar who hadn't disappeared entirely, the man who still had something to offer. His grip on her hands tightened. You gave me a chance, Sophia. Not just professionally, though that changed everything, but personally. You gave me a chance to be seen again. You gave me the same thing, Sophia said quietly. I was lonely in ways I didn't even recognize until you showed me what connection felt like. I love you. I've been afraid to say it because saying it makes it real, and real things can be lost. But I love you, Sophia Morgan. Not despite our impossible beginning, but partly because of it. I love you too. The words came out on a breath. I have for a while now. Then there's something I need to ask you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the ring from the antique store, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that had reminded him of her eyes. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. I know it hasn't been long by conventional standards, Marcus continued. And I know there are complications, the company, the public perception, all of it. But I also know that life is short and precious, and not to be wasted on fear. He opened the box. Sophia Morgan, will you marry me? Will you become part of our family, Maya's and mine? Will you take a chance on this life we've been building together? Sophia was crying now, tears streaming down her face in a way Marcus had never seen from the composed, controlled CEO he'd first encountered. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Their kiss was different from the first one at the lake house. Deeper, more certain, a promise, sealed. Maya's going to be insufferable about this, Sophia said when they finally pulled apart. She and Lily will take credit for the entire thing. They probably deserve some credit. Don't tell them that. They're smug enough already. Marcus laughed a sound of pure, uncomplicated joy that he'd once thought he'd never make again. We should tell her tomorrow, he said. She's been planning our wedding for months anyway. Why am I not surprised? Because you know her. Really know her. He touched Sophia's face gently. That's one of the things I love about you. The way you've loved Maya. Not because you had to, because you chose to. She made it easy. She's extraordinary. She gets that from her mother, too. They stood together on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below them like earthbound stars. Two people who had found each other through the strangest of circumstances. An insult in a grocery store, a moment of grace in the face of cruelty. A series of small choices that had led them here. Do you think Keisha would approve? Sophia asked quietly. I think she'd be grateful. Grateful that Maya has someone else to love her. Grateful that I'm not alone anymore. Marcus smiled. And I think she'd like you. You're both strong women who don't suffer fools. High praise. The highest. The next morning, Maya took the news exactly as expected, with squeals of delight that probably woke the neighbors and immediate demands to see the ring. It's beautiful, she breathed, examining the sapphire with artistic appreciation. Daddy has good taste. I helped him pick it out, Lily announced, via video call, her face filling half of Maya's phone screen. I told him sapphires would match her eyes. The conspiracy runs deep, Marcus observed. Someone had to make sure he didn't mess it up, Maya said primly. Boys need help with these things. Sophia laughed, pulling Maya into a hug. Thank you for the assist. You're welcome. Now can we talk about the wedding? I have ideas. The wedding itself happened in December, small and imperfect, and exactly what they wanted. They held it at the lake house with snow falling gently outside and a fire crackling in the hearth. Maya served as flower girl, scattering rose petals with the precision of someone who took responsibilities seriously. James gave Sophia away. Charlotte read a poem that Keisha had loved. In the front row, a single chair remained empty except for a framed photograph, and a small bouquet of lilies, Keisha's favorite flowers. A presence honored, a blessing implied. I wasn't sure if that was appropriate, Charlotte admitted afterward. But Maya insisted. It was perfect, Marcus said. She would have wanted to be here. She is here, Maya corrected, touching her chest. In my heart. She's always here. The reception was modest, but joyful colleagues from MMT mingling with academics from Marcus's former life. Schneider executives trading stories with Charlotte Dr. Weber, deep in conversation with Eleanor Winters about something that made them both laugh. Dr. Weber approached Marcus with a glass of champagne and a warm smile. A happy ending, he observed. The Germans appreciate those, you know. We're sentimental at heart, whatever anyone says. It's not an ending, Marcus said. It's a beginning. Even better. Weber raised his glass. To new beginnings, then, and to bridges that bring worlds together. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Marcus found a quiet moment with Sophia on the same veranda where they'd first acknowledged their feelings. How does it feel? She asked. Being married again. Different, he admitted. But good different. Like putting on a coat that fits perfectly, but isn't the same one you wore before. That's either very romantic or slightly morbid. Probably both. She laughed and leaned against him, her wedding ring catching the light from the windows. Thank you, Marcus. For what? For being brave enough to respond that day in Whole Foods. For being gracious when I deserved anything but. For giving me a chance to become someone better than I was. You gave me the same thing. Then we're even. We're partners, he corrected. That's better than even. Maya appeared in the doorway, still in her flower girl dress, her hair coming loose from its careful arrangement. Daddy, Mom. The word hung in the air the first time Maya had called Sophia that. Sophia's breath caught. Yes, sweetheart, Marcus managed. Lily and I finished the painting we've been working on. Can we show you? Of course. They followed Maya to the sunroom, where she and Lily had set up their art supplies. On an easel sat a canvas, a painting of 4 figures standing on a dock by a lake. 2 adults holding hands, 2 girls beside them, and above them, all watching from a sky full of stars, a woman with wings, and Keisha's smile. It's our family, Maya explained. All of us, the ones who are here and the one who watches. Sophia was crying again. Marcus couldn't blame her, his own eyes were far from dry. It's beautiful, Sophia whispered. It's absolutely beautiful. Mommy would have liked you, Maya said matter-of-factly. I know because I know her. And I know you. And you're both good. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Sophia managed. I know. Maya hugged her, her new mother, her father's second chance, the woman who had looked past circumstances to see the heart of things. Welcome to our family. Standing in that room surrounded by art and love and the blended fragments of past and future, Marcus Thompson understood something he'd been struggling to grasp for years. Grief didn't end. It transformed. It became part of you, woven into the fabric of who you were, informing every choice, every connection, every moment of joy and sorrow that followed. But it didn't have to be the whole story. His story had expanded to include new characters, new chapters, new possibilities. Keisha's death had nearly destroyed him. But surviving it, learning to live again, to love again, to build something meaningful from the wreckage that had made him stronger than he'd ever been. The man who had walked into Whole Foods that Friday afternoon felt like a stranger now. The handyman in paint-stained jeans buying budget groceries, hoping no one would notice how far he'd fallen. He wasn't that man anymore. He was a husband, a father, a leader, a bridge between worlds. He was Dr. Marcus Thompson, and he was home. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, 2 families had become one. And somewhere beyond the limits of understanding, a woman with a scientist's mind and a mother's heart watched over them all. Some stories end with tragedy. Some end with triumph. The best ones end with both pain, transformed into purpose loss, alchemized into love. This was that kind of story. And it was only beginning.